Welcome back to the deep dive. If you've been tracking global affairs, maybe over the last, say, 10 years, we're seeing a relationship just fundamentally change. We're talking about the U.S. and China. And if your picture of this is still, mostly trade fights or tariffs, you might need to update that picture because based on our sources, the whole game has gotten way bigger.
It really has. We've looked at quite a bit of research, and it suggests this isn't just, competition anymore. Analysts are actually calling it a systemic rivalry now.
Systemic rivalry. Okay.
And this deep dive is crucial because this rivalry, it's shaping, everything. Technology, global money flows, prosperity, even the basic rules of how the world works.
Right.
And importantly, those ripples hit you. Doesn't matter if you're in Washington, Lagos, Karachi, Berlin. It's global.
So our mission today is to dig into these sources, understand this contest not as just some temporary spat, but as a defining global test.
Yeah.
We need to figure out what systemic rivalry really means, why those old ideas about their relationship just didn't pan out, and crucially, who's actually trying to write the rules for the 21st century.
Well, to get the present, you really have to rewind maybe 2 decades. For ages, the relationship was kind of seen as this uneasy marriage of convenience.
Right. The U.S. buys, China makes, that kind of thing.
Exactly. America consumed, China produced. That was the basic deal.
And the big belief back then, especially after China joined the WTO in 2001, it seemed so simple. Connect economically, integrate them, and that'll naturally make Beijing more liberal.
More trade, more Western contact, more money, eventually more democracy. That was the theory.
But that theory, the sources are pretty clear, turned out to be a major historical miscalculation.
Huge miscalculation.
Yeah.
Instead of becoming more like the West, Beijing actually doubled down on its own unique model.
Yep.
So instead of opening up politically, they pushed this very centralized state capitalism, clamped down harder on domestic control, and then started using all that new economic muscle on the world stage.
Can you unpack that state capitalism piece a bit more? Because I think, like you said, it wasn't just about trade numbers changing. It felt like a different way of doing business entirely.
That's a really key point. It meant, private companies existed, but they were increasingly, let's say, guided by the state.
Guided how?
Often through things like mandatory Communist Party cells inside major companies. It became less about pure free markets and much more about state-led industrial strategy. Targeting specific national goals, like becoming #1 in technology.
Okay.
And at the same time, inside China, you saw this explosion of digital surveillance, more ideological control, which just flew in the face of those liberalization hopes from the 2000s.
So as all that's happening, Washington starts getting disillusioned, the language changes.
Dramatically.
The sources point out China gets explicitly relabeled, no longer just an economic partner. Now it's a strategic competitor.
Exactly. And that strategic competition is really the seed of the systemic rivalry we're talking about today.
Meaning the friction isn't just over soybeans or steel anymore.
No, it covers everything. Economics, tech, military might, even ideology, whose system is better. One analyst put it perfectly, I thought. The U.S.-China relationship is no longer about trade disputes. It's about who writes the rules of the 21st century.
That really hits home. Yeah.
Yeah.
But what makes this whole thing so strange and honestly kind of dangerous is that paradox you touched on. How can these two be strategic rivals, yet still so tangled up economically?
It's the central contradiction, isn't it? Deep, deep mistrust and hostility, strategically speaking. But they still need each other's markets, investments, supply chains. It's complicated.
So if the U.S. market just vanished tomorrow...
China faces a massive crisis.
Yeah.
Huge. And flip it. If China's factories suddenly stopped.
Inflation here goes through the roof, store shelves empty.
Right. So that interdependence, it forces some caution. But the mistrust is so deep now, it constantly threatens to just boil over.
Okay, let's break down where this competition is hottest. The sources highlight 4 main areas, they call them the commanding heights, where this rivalry is really playing out, often like a zero-sum game.
First up, technology. This is the new battlefield. You could call it the digital arms race.
Digital arms race.
Yeah, it's the fight for dominance in those core technologies that enable everything else. Advanced computer chips, AI, 5G, quantum computing.
There was a great line in the sources defining this. The 21st century arms race isn't nuclear, it's digital. And the strategies seem pretty clear, right? The U.S. tries to block China's access to the most critical tech, the cutting-edge chips, the manufacturing gear, trying to slow down their AI progress.
Exactly. Playing defense in a way, while China, they're pouring unbelievable amounts of money into becoming totally self-reliant in tech. insulating themselves from any future U.S. blocks.
The stakes there feel enormous. Control that tech, and you control future economic growth, military advantage, even how societies are monitored.
It's fundamentally a fight over the IP that's going to run the next few decades.
Okay, battlefield number 2, military power. Now, the U.S. obviously still has unmatched global reach, superior tech in lots of areas, but the sources pointed out something interesting. China's Navy, just by ship numbers, is actually bigger now.
It is, yeah. They've focused massively on building up naval power in their own backyard, so to speak.
But quantity isn't quality, necessarily.
Well, the U.S. Navy is still far more advanced overall, has more firepower, greater tonnage. But China's strategy is about regional dominance, especially asserting control in the South China Sea.
And you can't talk military without mentioning
Taiwan. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's the flashpoint that, as the analysis says, no one dares mishandle. Any mistake there, any miscalculation, could easily spiral this whole competition into a horrific global conflict.
It's chilling. Okay, so we have tech, we have military. What about influence through money and building stuff? That's a third area. Geoeconomics.
Right. This is the global contest using loans, investment, construction projects. Beijing's big play here is obviously the Belt and Road Initiative.
Building ports, railways, pipelines.
All across Asia, Africa, even into Europe. It's very tangible. You know, here's a road, here's a port. Often comes with loans that seem attractive up front, though sometimes the terms are a bit murky.
And the response from Washington and its allies, the sources mention things like the Quad, AUCO. Can you quickly decode those for us? What role do they play?
Sure, they're basically multilateral efforts trying to offer an alternative, push back a bit. The Quad is the U.S., Japan, India, and Australia. They cooperate a lot on maritime security in the Indo-Pacific, but also on things like resilient supply chains, setting tech standards, trying to create a counterweight.
Okay.
That's Australia, the UK, and the US. It's primarily a security pact. The most famous part is helping Australia get nuclear-powered submarines. It's a clear military balancing move.
Yeah.
So these are Washington using alliances to counter Beijing's big infrastructure plays.
Got it. Which leads us nicely to the fourth battlefield, maybe the most fundamental one, governance models. Democracy versus authoritarian capitalism, the big idea fight.
It is an idea fight, yes. But here's a crucial insight from the source material. For a lot of the world, especially countries in the global south, this isn't some abstract debate about political philosophy.
It's more practical.
Way more practical. For them, the bottom line is which system actually delivers, who brings better roads, jobs, stability, economic growth. It's pragmatic.
And that focus on what delivers is why this rivalry isn't just contained to the Pacific, right?
Yeah.
It forces choices everywhere.
Absolutely everywhere. You see the ripple effects constant. Look at alliances shifting. Japan, steadily rearming, rethinking its post-war stance because the neighborhood's changing. India is playing a careful game. Hedging, keeping economic ties open to the West, but also engaging with China and Europe. Stuck in this endless debate about strategic autonomy.
How to trade with China without becoming dangerously dependent.
Yeah, exactly. And you see it clearly in supply chains, too. This rivalry is forcing this massive, expensive reshuffling. Companies, countries, they're all trying to diversify, reduce reliance on China for manufacturing, find other sources for critical stuff, whether it is chips from Taiwan or minerals from Africa.
This friction also messes up cooperation on big global problems, doesn't it? Things where you need the U.S. and China working together.
Definitely. It strains what they call the global commons. Think climate change, pandemics, financial stability. You absolutely need the world's two biggest economies on the same page for those.
But the rivalry gets in the way.
Massively. The sources highlight how the sheer geopolitical tension acts like a huge brake. It makes cooperation incredibly difficult, sometimes impossible, or just painfully slow when speed is essential.
Which brings us back to the global south again. If they're kind of the swing states in this global contest, and their main question is pragmatic, who builds better roads, creates jobs, offers good loans, what does that tell us?
It suggests that, while the U.S. and China might talk ideology, the winner might just be decided by who's better at project management and development finance. If one system consistently delivers tangible benefits, more reliably, maybe with fewer strings attached, for developing nations, that choice, made country by country, could exert this really powerful non-military pressure on the whole global order.
It's fascinating. And now whenever we talk about a big power rising to challenge an established one, that historical warning always comes up, Graham Allison's Thucydides trap.
You have to mention it. It's the classic pattern. A rising power, Athens back then, China now, challenges the dominant ruler, Sparta then, the U.S. now. And the historical track record is frankly terrifying.
How bad?
Allison's study looked at 16 historical cases like this. 12 of them ended in war.
12 out of 16. That's sobering.
Extremely. History whispers a pretty grim warning.
But the analysis we looked at doesn't just stop there, does it? If history points towards conflict, what's different this time? Are there, modern breaks on this thing?
That's the crucial question. And yes, there are unique factors today. The sources emphasize constraints that just didn't exist in most past rivalries.
Such as?
Well, first, the obvious one. Nuclear weapons. Mutually assured destruction is a powerful deterrent. Second, what we already talked about, that incredibly dense economic interdependence. War would be catastrophically costly for both sides in a way it wasn't before.
Right. The economic self-interest acts as a brake.
Hopefully. And third, there's the shared vulnerability. Both the U.S. and China are susceptible to global crises that don't care about borders, climate change, future pandemics. They need to cooperate on some level to survive those.
So the sources kind of summed it up, didn't they? History whispers that war is likely, but history has never seen a U.S.-China rivalry before.
Exactly. That tension between the historical precedent and today's unique complexities, that's the tightrope we're walking.
Looking ahead then, the source material lays out basically 3 possible paths, 3 scenarios for how this could play out over the next few decades.
Yeah, the first, maybe the most optimistic, is managed rivalry. This means the intense competition continues tech, economics, influence, but leaders on both sides manage to set up guardrails, red lines, ways to de-escalate and avoid accidental conflict, especially over Taiwan.
Okay, managed competition. What's the nightmare scenario?
That's the conflict spiral. Basically, some crisis, an accidental collision in the South China Sea, maybe a deliberate move on Taiwan, escalates uncontrollably. It drags the U.S., China, and likely much of the world into a major war that maybe neither side actually wanted initially.
Grim. And the third option?
It's called competitive coexistence. In this future, the rivalry just becomes a permanent feature of the landscape. It never really goes away. But the sheer urgency of global problems like climate, pandemics, financial meltdowns forces them into these pockets of pragmatic cooperation. Limited, specific areas where they have to work together, even while competing fiercely everywhere else.
Do the analysts lean towards one of these scenarios being more likely than the others?
Not really, no. They're generally presented as all being plausible, which really underscores the key point the sources make. The outcome isn't predetermined. It's not destiny.
It comes down to
statecraft. Simple as that. The skill, the wisdom, the restraint of leaders in Washington and Beijing. Can they manage their ambitions, navigate the risks, avoid catastrophe? That's the test.
Because for the rest of the world, the goal seems pretty clear, doesn't it? They want the benefits of engagement with both powers, but without getting caught in the crossfire.
Absolutely. The global priority is crystal clear. Competition without catastrophe.
This really does feel like the defining challenge of our time. The outcome affects everything: supply chains, jobs, global stability, avoiding war.
It's the big one for this century, no doubt.
And that central question hangs over it all. Can the United States and China compete without basically destroying the future? We started off noting how the outcome might hinge on who delivers prosperity, especially to the global south. So here's a final thought to leave our listeners with. If the U.S. offers its coalition-based approach and China offers Belt and Road, could the collective choices of developing nations, deciding purely on who gives them better roads, better jobs, better loans, could that pragmatic calculation actually become the ultimate guardrail? A non-military force that keeps this whole thing from spiraling into the catastrophe that Thucydides' trap warns us about.
That's a really powerful thought. Maybe the world's pragmatism, its focus on tangible benefits, could be the unexpected factor that saves us from the worst historical outcomes. Something definitely worth watching.
Indeed. Join us next time for another deep dive.